She said it loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. Just loud enough to be undeniable, but still plausibly brushed off as just a joke. Except no one laughed. Not really. The moment froze in a strange cocktail of wine, muted jazz, and shame. His shame, specifically. He didn't flinch, didn't turn his head, just kept cutting into his rubbery salmon as if her words were part of the background noise. The man sitting beside her, a tall, smug idiot in a velvet tux who'd spent most of the evening performing a low-effort stand-up routine, snorted his approval. Another coworker, the lean one with the sculpted stubble and finance teeth, offered a fist bump. She gave it a soft tap, smirking, her lipstick flawless under the chandeliers. "Lighten up, sweetheart," she called over to him like a bartender humoring a lonely drunk. "It's just banter." He raised his glass slightly, as if in toast. "As you wish," he said. The table paused. It wasn't a reaction they expected. Not a protest. Not a joke. Just that. Cold. Hollow. Final. He finished his wine slowly. The gala was for some corporate ESG initiative, tree planting or mentorship or some other branding excuse. He had attended because she insisted, because it looked good, because it was expected, and like a loyal accessory, he had shown up, shaved, pressed his sleeves, bought new shoes he didn't need, sat silently through the donor speeches and phony toasts. And now, just before dessert, she chose that moment, between bites of creme brulee and flirtatious glances, to unpeel him like a dry label from an empty wine bottle. He excused himself quietly and stepped outside. The hotel's valet line was a mess of Teslas and men fumbling to tip with their phones. He bypassed it all and walked 3 blocks south to the parking garage where he'd left his car. A 12-year-old gray sedan with a scratched passenger door. The kind of car no one takes seriously, which had always suited him just fine. He didn't drive home immediately. Instead, he pulled into the top level of a closed medical plaza and killed the engine. The rooftop was empty, quiet. The city hummed beneath him, warm and ugly in the distance. He took out his phone and opened a secure contact app that required not only a fingerprint but a retinal scan, both of which he provided with eerie calm. There was only one contact in that app. No name, no photo, just a number, 0 to 11. He pressed it. 1 ring. 2. A voice answered. Mail. Dry. Confirm. He replied, Section 9. Clause D. A pause. Then the line went dead. In an office 3 time zones away, lights flickered to life in a soundproof room no one ever walked into without clearance. An aging man in a cardigan, the senior trustee, glanced at the blinking terminal, then pulled a worn binder from a fireproof drawer. Somewhere across the system, scripts began to execute. Emails were locked. Access logs updated. A queue formed. It would take a few hours for the machine to fully turn. But it had started. That was enough. Back on the rooftop, the man sat quietly in the driver's seat and watched his hands. They didn't shake. Not even a tremble. He thought about her smirk. The one she used to disarm men in negotiations. The one that made interns forget their words. That same smirk had once been his favorite thing about her. Back when it was wielded in his defense, not his humiliation. She used to laugh with him. Now she laughed at him. He opened the glove box and removed a small, silver tin. Inside were 5 cufflinks, 2 gold, 2 platinum, 1 jet black. That last one hadn't been worn in 19 years. He clipped it to his right cuff. At exactly 12:04 a.m., he drove home. She was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her dress was tossed carelessly over the chair, heels on the floor, phone charging on the nightstand. He could still smell her perfume. Still see the corner of her lipstick-stained wine glass on the bathroom sink. He lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling. He did not sleep. And just before dawn, he got up, shaved again, ironed his shirt, and left the house without saying a word. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. But something had shifted. And somewhere, buried in boardroom minutes, concealed inside sealed legal frameworks and forgotten morality clauses, a small but irreversible process had begun. She had laughed. And now, the system would answer. The elevator to the 38th floor creaked in that old money way, slow, deliberate, and insulated from the noise of the world below. It was the kind of building where tenants didn't need nameplates on doors because everyone who mattered already knew who sat where. The rest didn't matter. He stepped out at 5:42 a.m., no coat despite the fall chill clinging to the city. The hallway was dimly lit, paneled in deep walnut, and smelled faintly of paper and ink. Not fresh, but archival. He walked past 3 suites without glancing. At the end of the corridor, a brass plate read only, Vanguard Council. Inside, a single light glowed from the inner chamber. A secretary nodded silently and unlocked the door. No questions, no greetings. She already knew. The senior trustee was waiting. Elderly but sharp. A relic in suspenders, rolled-up sleeves, and wire-rimmed glasses that looked like they'd survived 2 financial crises and 3 wars. He didn't rise when the man entered. He only gestured to the leather chair across from his desk and slid forward a document sealed in red wax. "You're invoking Section 9, Clause D?" the old man asked. His voice was unreadable, equal parts reverence and warning. He nodded once. The trustee studied him. There was no ceremony, no dramatic flourish. Just a pause. A small inhale. "Do you understand what this triggers?" Another nod. "This isn't a shakeup. It's a reckoning. It strips the CEO's line of all discretionary rights. Veto power, preferential dividends, committee seats, everything. It places all voting control solely in the hands of the majority equity holder, which, as of 2001, was reassigned under the trust's phantom clause to you." He knew. He had always known. The document was placed in front of him. It was thick, already tabbed, every clause highlighted in pale green. The trustee's personal pen, a Mont Blanc etched with initials from a long-dead client, was placed neatly beside it. He signed without hesitation. One copy was placed in the vault, one in the outbound courier, the third scanned and sent to an internal distribution list, so secret it wasn't even listed on the trust's official network. The old man stamped the corner with a heavy steel seal. "At 8:15, they'll know," he said quietly. "Once compliance receives the activation packet, there's no way to stop the cascade." He stood to leave. "May I ask," the trustee said, standing for the first time, "what finally triggered your hand?" He adjusted his cuff, the black link catching a faint glint in the morning light. "She laughed," he said. The trustee blinked, then slowly nodded. "Understood." Downstairs, the same elevator groaned open, and he descended back into the city. Across town, silent systems spun into motion. At 6:12 a.m., a secured email went to a compliance officer at Dyer and Holt Corporate Trust Services. 2 encrypted keys unlocked a subfolder that had not been accessed in 17 years. Inside, a copy of the 1998 Joint Oversight Agreement, co-signed by his grandfather and the CEO's father, rested like a sleeping god. At 6:31 a.m., 3 software engineers received unusual pings from legal tech infrastructure with Level 1 access flags. One of them, groggy from an all-nighter, joked in Slack. Either we're getting acquired, or someone's digging up the apocalypse clause. At 7:03 a.m., a partner at the firm of Bennings, Sloan and Marquez, who had represented the CEO's family in arbitration for over 2 decades, received a short text from the trustee. It read, "Activation confirmed. Advise your client to prepare statements. Media will know by noon." By 7:46 a.m., the CEO's private calendar was forcibly updated with a mandatory meeting labeled Urgent, Governance Review, Trust Compliance. And by 8:15 a.m. on the dot, the screens across the 26th floor of the company's global headquarters lit up with a banner no one in the building had ever seen before. Alert! Trust Control Reconciliation Process initiated. Level 0 access required. The CFO stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee. In the corner office, the general counsel's jaw hung open as he read the memo that had just printed, an unsigned directive pointing to a legal clause buried in an agreement older than most of the executives themselves. Every line of power they thought they understood had just been rewritten, and not a single person had seen it coming. Because the man they mocked, the one with the quiet demeanor, the cheap car, the worn-out shoes, wasn't just a husband. He was the heir to the trigger, and he had just pulled it. Her morning began with almond milk and affirmation podcasts, the way it always did. She drove in early, windows down, humming to some bubblegum pop her assistant would later pretend to like. The building's glass facade greeted her like it always did, sleek, self-important, sterile. She felt powerful, important. She always did on Thursdays. Her corner office overlooked the east side of the skyline, tinted glass filtering out the ugliness below. She dropped her designer bag on the chair and kicked off her heels. It was going to be a good day. She'd finally gotten approval to pitch her ESG marketing campaign directly to the board, legacy through leadership, or something equally hollow with good font choices. She barely needed to try. Her charm, her networking, her effortless way of making men feel important, those were the real weapons. The rest was just polish. She was halfway through her oat latte when her assistant knocked. Not the normal rhythmic knock. Just 2 flat taps. "You might want to see this," the girl said, poking her head in. She looked pale. "What?" she asked without looking up from her inbox. "The CFO just left a board meeting." Crying. She blinked. "What?" "I don't know." She went out the back. The meeting wasn't even on the calendar. She chuckled, masking her nerves. It's probably just another financial restructuring drama. You know how emotional she gets. But as the door closed, her phone buzzed. Slack notification. "Call from marketing. Did you just lose access to the G4 strategic deck folder? I just got booted." She ignored it. Probably IT. They were always restructuring things. Another buzz. Finance Ops Group. "Is anyone else seeing red flags on shared resources? I'm locked out of Q3 analytics and next-gen IP files." Another knock. Same assistant. "Compliance just locked 3 of the shared drives." They sent a mass email but BCC'd the list. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard now. "What are you talking about?" They used a black code header. "I've never even seen that format before." Then, another message. Legal department broadcast. "All department heads to remain in place until further notice. External communications suspended pending internal governance audit. Please do not speak to media or vendors at this time." She stood, walked to the window. Still looked like any other day out there. Taxis, coffee carts, urban life doing its best impersonation of control. Her screen lit up again. Urgent board alert. Emergency shareholder call scheduled, 11 a.m. In-person attendance mandatory. No context. No explanation. She opened her calendar. The 11 a.m. slot had appeared like a ghost. No invitee list. No description. Just a location. Top floor. Executive conference suite. Level Z clearance. She hadn't even known there was a Level Z. Her palms started to sweat. "Do we have a press leak?" she asked the air, dialing comms instinctively. No answer. Just voicemail. She didn't leave one. Her badge buzzed in her drawer. When she opened it, the access control terminal blinked red once, then green. Not normal. She called her husband out of habit. No answer. Then she remembered. He had left early this morning. Earlier than usual. No note. No "have a good day." Just gone. Her heart did something strange. Not a skip. A pause. A small stall in her chest that sent a whisper through her blood. Something's wrong. She opened LinkedIn. Searched her own company. Scrolled. Then stopped. Someone had just posted a job listing for a senior executive reorganization consultant. A firm known for hostile transitions. The kind that happened after a collapse. Not before. The job had been posted 21 minutes ago. She stood and paced. Another message arrived. This time, a text. From her father. "Do not speak to anyone. Call me as soon as you get this." She froze. It wasn't the content. It was how it was written. No emojis. No exclamation points. No "hey sweetie." Just cold. Direct. Final. She sank into her chair and stared at the screen. Her inbox had stopped refreshing. She clicked send/receive. Nothing. The office outside was no longer humming. It was quiet. Unnaturally quiet. Then her assistant returned, pale as a sheet. "Legal's here," she whispered. Unannounced. No appointment. No internal notification. They went straight to the boardroom and locked the door behind them. The woman blinked. Once. Then again. Should I prep the ESG deck?" the assistant offered, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. She was already staring at her desktop's reflection in the glass wall, her own face looking back at her, but unfamiliar. Something about her eyes looked smaller. Her skin, less vibrant. Her lipstick, too harsh. The power she wore like perfume had started to fade. In its place, a hairline crack of unease. And behind that crack, something much colder. Something approaching dread. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and it was like stepping into a pressure chamber. Normally, the 26th level of that building sounded like wealth. Soft shoes on marble, controlled laughter, the occasional ringtone set to some tasteful classical melody. That day, it sounded different. Hushed, rushed, mechanical, like something was winding itself tighter by the second, and no one could figure out where the ticking came from. Her heels clicked sharply as she walked the corridor, forcing calm into her spine. She smiled at 2 interns who wouldn't meet her eyes. She passed the finance office, empty. Not a soul. Even the glass candy jar on the reception desk was gone. That jar had been there for 8 years. By the time she reached her office, 3 more texts had stacked up. All from senior staff. None of them coherent. "Where did the fund transfer authorization go? I never signed that. Are you seeing the restricted tag on internal briefs? We're being raided, aren't we?" She was about to type out some sarcastic reassurance when her door opened without a knock. It was Harold from IT, a man who usually avoided eye contact and mumbled into his hoodie. Today, he looked like he'd been up for 3 days straight and had just discovered God, or the devil, in the servers. "We're shutting down external access," he said. "Excuse me." "To everything. Email, cloud sync, all external ports." The order came from above, but not from the CEO. She blinked. Then from who? Harold didn't answer. He just left. Outside, people were no longer pretending to work. Huddles formed around desks. Phone calls whispered behind closed doors. The sense of hierarchy, once ironclad, was disintegrating like wet paper. Then the Slack status changed for HR. Head of HR, offline. A moment later, an internal memo auto-populated in everyone's inbox. Effective immediately, I resign from my position. Please direct all inquiries to legal. No signature. No thank you. Just a hard stop. Her throat tightened. She stormed toward the boardroom. Halfway there, she saw him. The elevator dinged again, and out stepped a man who never used it. Not in years. The CEO's father. A legend in tailored navy. White hair combed like a crown. Face like stone. The kind of man who built empires when people still smoked during meetings and closed deals with handshakes that shattered bones. No entourage. No driver. No smile. He walked straight past reception, past the gasping assistants and startled interns. He didn't even glance at her. She stepped forward instinctively. "Mr. Alden, what's going?" He raised one hand. Just one. Not toward her. Not against her. Just a flat, cold motion of dismissal. Then he disappeared into the boardroom. The doors slammed shut behind him. She stood in the hallway, stunned. Even the security guard looked rattled. Exactly 10 minutes later, the boardroom doors opened. No one followed him out. He emerged alone, face ashen, jaw tight, shoulders tense in a way that seemed to age him by decades. He looked like he'd just been told God was dead. Or worse, his legacy was. Then he saw her. And he stopped. The hallway froze. Interns fell silent. Executives paused. Even the building's HVAC seemed to hesitate. He took 3 slow steps toward her, each louder than it should have been. "What?" he barked. "Did you let your husband do?" The words echoed down the hall like gunfire. People winced. Phones dropped. One woman covered her mouth. Her face flushed crimson. I don't understand what you're talking about. He doesn't even work here." The older man's eyes drilled into hers, wide and bloodshot. "He owns you. He owns me. That little clause we buried to honor the founders? That relic?" He triggered it. The moment he invoked Section 9, this company stopped being mine. Or yours. Or anything we thought it was. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stepped closer. "You have no idea what you married into. And now, you've woken it up." And just like that, he turned and left. No further explanation. No parting blow. Just silence behind him. She stood there, paralyzed. Somewhere behind her, a printer began spitting out legal documents. Page after page of things she didn't understand, couldn't control, didn't authorize. She turned slowly toward the boardroom. Inside, no one had left. The doors were still ajar, just slightly, and she could see the shareholders. Pale, quiet, reading. And at the center of the table was a red folder. Unmarked. Thick. Familiar. It was her husband's. She recognized the leather binding. But it was the logo on the cover that made her knees weaken. Not their company's crest. A seal she hadn't seen in years. Black, wax embossed, shaped like a tree with no leaves. The emblem of the family trust. The one she used to joke about. The one she never believed was real. The boardroom had gone mute. The only sound was the gentle, rhythmic hiss of the HVAC, broken occasionally by the flutter of a paper being flipped or the quiet throat clear of someone realizing, far too late, that their job might no longer exist in a few hours. The document was already halfway down the table when she entered. Its presence didn't announce itself. It didn't need to. It simply was. The kind of document that changes everything, not with dramatic headlines, but with precise, deadly language and ink that had dried long before anyone in the room realized the war had started. Red leather cover. No title. The seal on the front, black wax, pressed with a symbol she recognized only vaguely. Something her husband once called archaic estate law stuff. She'd never asked questions. She'd never cared. Now she wished she had. At first, she didn't understand why everyone was so quiet. Then she saw it. The first page, photocopied and underlined in fine red pen. Joint Operating Governance Agreement, 1998. Trust-Controlled Voting Entities. Oversight Clause Addendum D. Below that, an innocuous sentence that looked almost too simple to matter. In the event that a direct relation, by marriage or blood, of a voting trustee engages in conduct deemed reputationally corrosive by said trustee or trust advisory council, full controlling interest and voting rights may be reassigned, effective immediately, to the family trust, without need for board approval or third-party consent. She read it 3 times, as if doing so might rewrite the ink. Her hands went cold. "Who the hell wrote this?" she finally asked, forcing her voice steady. "This wasn't part of the charter. This can't be real." A junior partner from legal, a man she once called useless during an off-site, looked up at her, pale. "It's very real. It was filed during the original merger between the Alden Trust and your family's board appointments. It was buried under the initial deferred clause registry." She blinked. "That clause was ceremonial," my father said. "Your father never read the full founding agreement," another voice snapped. It was the chair of the audit committee, an old woman who had been on the board since before she was hired. "He signed it to get capital, cheap capital, and he paid for it with blind obedience. That clause has never been revoked. And your husband just activated it." He's not. He doesn't even know how this works." The chair didn't flinch. "He doesn't need to know. The trustees do. And they've already voted." On the screen behind her, the corporate intranet refreshed. A new memo populated in red. "Trust Compliance Directive. Internal Review of Executive Conduct. Phase 1 initiated." She spun back toward the document and flipped through the pages. Hundreds of them. Photos, screenshots, transcripts, timelines. Her gala comment, word for word. The audio file attached. Her voice, unmistakable. "My CEO and colleagues are real men. Unlike you." Underneath it, incident timestamp, 8:57 p.m. Clause activation, 9:03 p.m. Her affair, documented with sickening precision. Hotel receipts, calendar entries, Slack messages recovered from backups she thought were erased. One message from the head of marketing, dated 3 months ago. "He's too dull to notice. And if he does, let him. He's got no spine." That sentence was highlighted in yellow. Her stomach churned. Then came the social media file. Private messages, deleted tweets, even an internal post she had once sent joking that marrying for stability is the worst kind of death. Each item was labeled with a risk score. Corrosive behavior indexed by severity, with trust advisors' notes beside them. Some included her name, some included his. But the most jarring section was at the end, an appendix. Total accumulated violations, 17. Cumulative conduct assessment, reputationally damaging. Trust vote, 5-0, motion carried. There it was. No trial, no conversation, just execution by paper. She stared at the signature page, 5 names. For she didn't recognize. The 5th? Her husband's. Just his first initial and last name. But she knew that handwriting. Clean. Precise. Final. He had voted, too. The man she'd called small. The man she'd joked about, belittled, ignored. He had pressed the button she never thought existed. "You can't use this," she hissed. "This is an ambush. He's weaponizing our personal issues." The audit chair cut her off with a stare so cold it could have stopped a heartbeat. "It's not weaponized," she said. "It's structured, and it's been waiting for years." Another page flipped. Under the clause, in fine print, "Any challenge to the morality ruling must be made within 72 hours, and only if the triggering trustee is proven to have acted with malicious intent." She laughed bitterly. Malicious intent. He didn't even say anything. "That's exactly why it worked," the chair replied. No grandstanding. No shouting. Just a nod to a centuries-old system that didn't need volume to be lethal. She sank slowly into the nearest chair. All of it. The parties, the corporate ladder climbing, the smug looks, the whispered jokes, had been recorded. Calculated. Used. Not by paparazzi. Not by enemies. By him. Her husband. The man no one in this building took seriously. Including her. Especially her. She reached for her phone to order lunch. Fingers trembling just slightly, but enough that she missed the Face ID scan 3 times before it unlocked. The screen finally lit up, but the food delivery app crashed. She tried again. Crashed again. Fine. She'd walk down to the cafe herself. Anything to get out of that office for a few minutes. Clear her head. Breathe. Reset. Maybe even, God forbid, think. She grabbed her jacket and purse and headed for the elevator. As she passed reception, she swiped her corporate card to tap out. A red beep. Then another. The machine blinked, declined. "See admin." She stared at it, confused. She turned to the receptionist. "System glitch?" she asked, her voice brittle. The receptionist, A girl who used to giggle nervously around her wouldn't meet her gaze. Actually, IT said your card access was revoked. You may want to check with HR. They don't have an HR, she snapped. She resigned this morning. The girl shrugged, eyes wide and helpless. She stormed back to her office, pulled open her MacBook, only to find the screen locked with a full-screen system prompt. Your access has been restricted. Contact Trust Oversight. She typed her password 3 times. Nothing. Then the cursor blinked, and the screen shut off. She yanked her drawer open to grab her personal phone. The office badge was still inside. Out of reflex, she held it up to her laptop's side sensor again. Invalid credentials. Then the door behind her opened. It wasn't IT. It wasn't legal. It was a security guard. Not one she recognized. No smirk. No power trip. Just silent efficiency. He nodded politely and said, "Ma'am, I've been asked to assist with your transition." Her voice caught in her throat. "Excuse me." He already had a box in hand, company issue. A fresh cardboard cube labeled Executive Transition Protocol. She'd never even seen one in real life. Just heard rumors from the merger days. "Your personal items," he said. "I'll give you privacy." She sat back in her chair, suddenly numb. That chair, that $1,000 ergonomic throne she'd bragged about on panels, it no longer felt like hers. The air in the room had changed. Cooler. Thinner. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Call me. Now. Do not speak to the press." She blinked hard. The press? She bolted upright, rushed to the window, and peeled open the blinds. Down below, lined up in front of the sleek glass entrance, were 4 news vans. One of them already had the satellite dish deployed. Reporters were gathering. Cameras aimed. Microphones out. The knot in her stomach twisted until she nearly gagged. She turned back to her screen and grabbed her iPad instead. She opened a browser. Typed the company's name. The first result was a headline from a financial outlet known for brutal scoops. Family Trust executes morality clause, seizes control of tech giant in overnight coup. Below it, subheaders scrolled like blades. Unprecedented trigger from founding trust catches executives off guard. CEO's family reportedly blindsided by decades-old governance clause. Spouse misconduct cited in leaked oversight documents. Her face burned. Her palms went ice cold. The floor beneath her felt like it was tilting. There was no photo yet, no name. But she knew the spotlight was already turning. A second article had already been indexed. Insiders say morality clause triggered by executives' spouses, pattern of disrespect and conduct unbecoming. She couldn't breathe. She dropped her iPad, grabbed her purse, what was left of her dignity, and headed toward the elevator. The security guard followed quietly. Her badge didn't work to call the elevator. He had to use his master keycard. As the doors closed, she glanced back at the hallway. 2 colleagues watched from behind tinted glass. One of them, the same woman who once toasted her promotion, didn't even pretend to wave. No one spoke. The ride down felt like an execution. In the lobby, the receptionist averted her eyes. The security guard walked ahead, a shield she never thought she'd need. The lobby doors opened, and the cameras were already waiting. A man with a microphone shouted her name. Another barked a question. "Were you aware your husband had majority control?" A third. "Do you deny the conduct outlined in the trust release?" Flashbulbs. Cords. Cameras shoved toward her face like weapons. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her mouth moved. Her lips formed shapes, but no sound. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. This time from her husband. No words. Just a forwarded image. It was a screenshot of a tweet from a mid-tier financial blogger. That moment when the invisible spouse turns out to be the invisible owner. Below it, a comment with 14,000 likes. "Marry quiet. Mock loud. Lose everything." She dropped the phone. It shattered on the pavement. The security guard picked it up, offered it to her wordlessly. She didn't take it. She just stood there, in full daylight, frozen, while the press documented the collapse of a woman who once called herself invincible. And somewhere behind her, in the offices she no longer owned, the cleanup had already begun. The car ride was a blur. Her driver didn't say a word, whether out of fear, discomfort, or instructions from above, she didn't know. The city passed in a haze of noise she couldn't register. Horns, sirens, the rhythmic thud of tires on old pavement. None of it touched her. She sat in the back seat like a discarded mannequin, face pale, pulse erratic, her thoughts looping between that headline, that tweet, and her husband's silence. When they finally pulled up to the stone gate of her father's estate, a place she hadn't visited in months, her hand trembled reaching for the door. There was no staff outside, no lights, no greeting. Just the heavy silence of a fortress under siege. She stepped inside and immediately smelled it. Whiskey. Her father never drank during the day. It was one of his things. Morning was for clarity. Liquor was for celebration or destruction. He was in the den. Not the formal room he used for guests, but the old one, tucked behind the library. The one with the antique pool table no one played on, and the taxidermy bear from some hunting trip he took decades ago. He didn't look up when she entered. She opened her mouth to speak, but he beat her to it. Close the door. She obeyed. He poured himself another 2 fingers from a crystal decanter she didn't recognize. Definitely not his usual. It was the emergency bottle, the one from the locked cabinet. He sat in his chair, elbows on knees, staring at nothing. "You knew," she whispered. "Didn't you?" He took a long sip. "Not knew. Suspected." She stepped forward. Suspected what? That he had money? That he was some kind of silent partner? Her father finally looked up, eyes bloodshot. "No. I suspected he was waiting." She blinked. "For what?" He laughed. Not a kind laugh. Something brittle and hollow. "For you to give him a reason." She staggered back slightly. "You're blaming me?" He stood, surprisingly steady, walked to the fireplace and pulled a faded folder from behind a framed photo. Tossed it on the table between them. She opened it. Old legal documents. Deeds. Voting agreements. A black and white photo of 2 men shaking hands in front of a warehouse. One of them was her grandfather. The other, his grandfather. "This company only exists because of his bloodline," her father said quietly. "Your great-uncle ran the books, but it was his grandfather who cut the check. The original loan. The property. The seed money. We kept it quiet because we didn't want questions. The Alden Trust didn't need credit. They needed leverage. And we gave it to them." She turned the page. Another document. This one stamped and signed by both families. A founding clause, handwritten, then later notarized. She shook her head. "Why didn't you tell me?" He walked behind her, leaning on the back of the chair. "Because I didn't think you'd be foolish enough to marry into it without asking why he never cared about titles. Why he never chased promotions. Why he always let you hold the spotlight." She stared down at the ink. "So old. So calm. You thought he was weak," her father muttered. "But he was just patient," she whispered. "But he never even talked about this. That's what made it brilliant." She turned to him, shaking now. "You're acting like he planned this. Like this whole thing. Us, our marriage, was some long con." He tilted his head. "Maybe not at first. But you gave him everything he needed." Her lip curled. "I was loyal. For years. I built a career. I gave him status. Access. You gave him proof." She blinked. "The gala video? The affair? That's just the wrapping. He didn't need scandal. He needed trigger events. And you handed them over, tied in a bow, laughing like he wasn't even there." She stepped back. "So what? You're saying I deserve this?" Her father didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the wall safe, punched in a code she'd never seen before, and retrieved a worn, red ledger. He opened to a bookmarked page and held it up for her to see. It was a flowchart. Complex. Dozens of LLCs, shell entities, foundations. At the top, Alden Strategic Holdings. In the middle, her company's original funding line. And at the bottom, circled in red ink, trigger threshold met, reassignment approved. She reached out, hesitated, then touched the page. "When did this happen?" He glanced at the clock. "The moment you made that joke about real men." Her knees gave slightly. She caught herself on the desk. "You didn't just insult a man at a party," her father said. "You challenged the quiet empire behind him." She shook her head, tears welling now, raw and unfiltered. "I didn't know." He stared at her coldly. "No, you didn't ask." She looked back at the document. Her own name, listed as potential liability, had been underlined in light pencil long before any of this had happened. "I never imagined." Her father cut her off. "You married the executioner," and then handed him the blade. And with that, he sat back down, poured another drink, and turned his face toward the dying fireplace, as if she was no longer there at all. The next morning started with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the sterile, hospital corridor kind. Her inbox was empty. Not quiet, empty. All calendar invites gone. No new messages. Even the usual junk from internal HR portals and vendor newsletters had stopped. At first, she thought it was another system lockout. She rebooted everything. Twice. Still nothing. Then came the first headline. Alden Trust initiates rapid asset reallocation. 3 subsidiaries sold in overnight fire sale. She clicked. 3 subsidiaries. Gone. sold off to private equity vultures in a 3 a.m. transaction that bypassed all internal channels. One of them was the data analytics arm she had helped build from scratch. She knew every engineer in that building by name. She'd given the first speech when it launched. Now, the building was marked under new management, and the entire staff had been told not to report to work. She checked her contacts, called the head of that division, straight to voicemail. Then a second article dropped. CEO tenders resignation amid internal turmoil. Her heart stopped. The company's founder, the face of the brand, her mentor, her protector, gone. The statement was short. 2 lines. In light of recent developments, I am stepping aside to allow the trust full operational latitude. I believe this is in the best interest of the company and its future. No thank yous. No fanfare. Just a bullet to the head. She clicked open her financial app. The personal one. The one she never thought anyone else had access to. And that's when she saw it. Frozen accounts. Not by the bank. By compliance. Trust compliance. An alert flashed. Pending audit. Retroactive executive compensation review in progress. She felt cold. Then another notification. An email she couldn't believe had her name on it. Notice of clawback intent. Fiscal years 2020 to 2023. She opened the attachment. Her bonuses. Gone. Travel reimbursements. Red flagged. Stock options. Voided. The notes were brutal. Behavior inconsistent with fiduciary standards outlined under Clause D. Reassessment required per trust directive. Her phone buzzed. A message from someone in finance. They're asking about your company card receipts from Aspen and Dubai. You might want to get ahead of it. She replied. Who's they? No response. She opened Slack. No workspace access. She tried to message a friend on Teams. Unavailable. Then she checked her personal text threads. The group chat with the other senior VPs, once a never-ending stream of memes, inside jokes, dinner plans, had been renamed. Archive, and she had been removed. She switched to LinkedIn, desperate to see who was still alive, still reachable, still hers. 14 profile views in the last 24 hours. All anonymous. No messages. No invites. No comments. She posted a carefully worded update. I remain deeply committed to my professional journey and am exploring new leadership opportunities aligned with my values. Nothing. 10 minutes. Then 20. Then an hour. Not a single like. She texted the head of communications. What's going on behind the scenes? Are we still spinning this? Nothing. She called her lawyer. Voicemail. She tried her father again. Straight to voicemail. Again. She checked her email. Still empty. And that's when it hit her. She wasn't just losing things. She had already lost them. The silence wasn't lag. It was abandonment. Her corporate identity, meticulously curated over 12 years, was vanishing pixel by pixel. No scandalous articles. No courtroom scenes. Just erasure. Clinical. Precise. She typed out a message to the headhunter she used to ignore. Hi. Wondering if you're still placing at the executive level. Would love to chat. Clicked send. 5 minutes. Nothing. She refreshed. Still nothing. Her gaze drifted to the shelf behind her. Dozens of plaques. Awards. Engraved crystal. One from a Women in Tech panel that had called her a visionary force of modern leadership. She picked it up. It felt like a joke now. She set it down and stared at the screen. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a random number. She answered. A voice she didn't recognize. Just a courtesy call. We're going to need the keys to the company vehicle by Friday. She laughed, bitter and loud. I bought that car, she snapped. No, ma'am. It was leased through the executive retention plan. The trust dissolved it this morning. Click. The call ended. She looked out her window. No press vans now. No cameras. No flashing lights. Just her reflection, tired and blurred by the glare, staring back at her from a building that no longer welcomed her. And behind her, the lights on her monitor dimmed. Standby. Disconnected. Irrelevant. The knock at the door was sharp. 3 quick raps. Not a delivery. Not police. The kind of knock that made your stomach twist before you even stood up. She opened it to find a man in a charcoal gray jacket, holding a slim black envelope. No logos. No signature required. Just a nod. And then he was gone before she could ask a single question. She locked the door behind her, hands already trembling. Inside the envelope was a flash drive. Matte black. No markings. Just one yellow sticky note on it. In handwriting she recognized instantly. Watch it. Alone. It was his handwriting. She plugged it into her laptop. A single file. Gallo_CM3_master.mp4. She double-clicked. The screen flickered, then resolved into color. It was footage she hadn't known existed, angled from behind a row of potted palms at the charity gala. The quality was sharp, unforgiving. It showed the ballroom in soft golden light, the tables glistening with glassware, the donors in their usual blend of arrogance and philanthropy. And then, her voice, bright, sharp, mocking. Laughter rippled across the screen. There she was, centered perfectly in the frame, leaning forward in that crimson dress, wine glass in hand, her coworker grinning beside her. And then she said it, clear, crisp. My CEO and colleagues are real men, unlike you. There was no laugh track, no way to pretend it was a joke, just those words, ringing out across the banquet hall. The camera shifted slightly, panning past the others to capture him, seated at the far edge of the table, expressionless, not broken, not wounded, just still, his eyes fixed on her, silent. And then, barely 5 seconds later, he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and typed something. The screen faded to black. She paused the video, rewound, played it again. There was something about the way he looked at her, like a surgeon eyeing the moment before incision. Not angry, not humiliated, calculating. She stared at the timestamp in the corner, 8:57 and 11 seconds p.m. She minimized the video and opened the forwarded internal timeline one of the legal analysts had anonymously sent her days ago. She scrolled. Clause invocation logged. 9:03 and 27 seconds p.m. 6 minutes later. 6 minutes after that look. Her fingers were numb. She played the clip again, watched herself laughing, flicking her hair, performing for the approval of people who no longer answered her texts, people who had already scrubbed her from their LinkedIn contacts. She watched herself humiliate the man who, at that very moment, had begun the quiet dismantling of her entire world. Not in rage, not with screaming or threats, but with a phone call. Calm, surgical, final. She hit pause and sat frozen, her breath catching in her throat. Because that look, the one he gave her right before reaching for his phone, wasn't just detached. It was prepared. He hadn't just stumbled into this clause. He'd waited. He'd known exactly what he needed. A final trigger. A clean timestamp. A moment of undeniable conduct. Recorded, unfiltered, indisputable. And she'd given it to him. Gift-wrapped. She hit play again. Watched her own words fall like a guillotine. She imagined what he felt, sitting in that chair. Letting her finish the sentence. Letting her savor the moment. Knowing what was coming. He had already lined up the legal mechanism. He'd already structured the trusts. The boardroom votes. The succession plans. All he needed was the signal. And that night, she gave it to him. On camera. With witnesses, smiling. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number again. Just a text. A screenshot. The video. Uploaded. Unlisted link. Private. But already viewed 27 times. She knew what that meant. Board members. Trustees. Attorneys. The record had been made. Circulated. Archived. She dropped the phone. The sound it made on the hardwood was soft. Too soft for the weight she felt in her chest. The laptop screen still glowed. Her frozen smile. Her raised glass. Her punchline. And behind her, his eyes. Not hurt. Not angry. Just watching. Waiting. And then, ending it all, without ever raising his voice. The boardroom was silent when he walked in. Not the strange silence of confusion that had gripped the building over the past week, but something deeper. Older. Like the room had just remembered its true purpose. And it wasn't collaboration. It was execution. He entered without hurry, flanked by 2 men in gray suits and a woman in black, their badges marked not with the company's logo, but with the seal of the Trust Oversight Council. The doors shut behind them with a finality that sent a visible shiver through the remaining executives. At the head of the table, the interim CEO stood and nodded, stiffly, respectfully, like a captain giving the bridge to the true commander. He didn't speak. He simply took the chair at the far end, the one that had always remained empty during board meetings. Symbolic, they said, reserved for legacy. No one had ever sat in it. Until now. Across the room, she was already on her feet, pale, hollow-eyed, dressed like she hadn't changed clothes in 2 days. The makeup was gone. The certainty was gone. All that remained was a woman barely keeping her spine straight through the last flickers of denial. She opened her mouth. I didn't know. He didn't even glance at her. One of the trust officials placed a folder in front of him. The chairman, a quiet man whose name had never appeared in any press release, handed him a pen already uncapped. The document was short, just a single sheet. The last sheet. He signed it. The large screen behind him lit up. Effective immediately, Liquidation of remaining executive assets. Trust authorization complete. There it was. The end. No debates. No rebuttals. No soft landings. The final sweep. She felt her knees buckle slightly and gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Wait, she croaked, her voice raw. Please, just why? He still didn't look at her. The trust officials began collecting binders. One began sealing documents into tamper-proof sleeves. The board secretary clicked her pen shut and powered off her device. The air was leaving the room, like it was already moving on to its next tenant. She stepped forward, desperation cracking through her voice now. Please, just tell me why. You could have said something. You could have warned me. He finally turned. Just his head. Their eyes met. His were the same color they'd always been. Calm. Still. Unreadable. And then, with a voice so quiet it silenced even the room's clocks, he said, "You wanted real men." Then he stood. No more. No less. He walked out without a glance back. The trust officials followed. Then the legal counsel. Then the chairman. The doors closed behind them. She stood there, frozen in place. No one moved to comfort her. No one whispered. No one looked her in the eye. She turned slowly. On the wall, the screen had updated again. A new line of text. Transfer of executive entitlements complete. Position status, null. Below that, a loading bar, already past 70%. She looked around the table. The seats were already being vacated. Her final ally stood, nodded respectfully to the room, and left. No one said her name. No one said goodbye. Outside that room, the company would go on. Slimmer, quieter, smarter. But inside, she remained frozen, a woman who'd once mocked the man who held the trigger and dared him to use it. He never raised his voice. He never made a threat. He just watched, waited, and when the time was right, he answered her laughter, not with words, but with power, and silence, and one signature. It was all it took to end her kingdom, and it was signed with a hand she used to hold.